Hello and welcome to the Hacking State podcast. This is your host, Alex Mershak. With me today is Aidan Beshoff. Hey, Aidan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Alex. Nice to have you.
It's so wonderful to have you. And before we jump into it, why don't you just tell the people a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. So I guess the technical term would be hypnotist. I am qualified in multiple forms of hypnosis and hypnotherapy. I would say, in a broader sense, I am a student of the subconscious mind. Um, and on a personal level, I am an explorer of my own inner world through the medium of the subconscious and symbolism.
Okay. Well, that's a lot there. We could pick at any number of one of those threads, but I guess to get started, what got you interested in kind of subconscious, the area of the subconscious as such, and different modalities for interacting with it?
Yeah, I found it through the probably definitely the lowest point in my life. It was during COVID, and I had just graduated from college. In the height of all that kind of craziness, and I couldn't really understand what was happening around me. Um, and to give some context to before then, even I had always struggled with bouts of anxiety and bouts of pretty severe depression. And during COVID, amidst all the confusion of the world, I hit like a real kind of breaking point with regards to that. And I can actually distinctly remember crying in my mother's arms, just exasperated with the state of the world and how none of it made any sense to me. People's actions didn't make sense to me. Um, Everything around me just seemed to be in confliction with my own kind of beliefs and my own kind of view on the world, and I found it very challenging and very disheartening. And it was after that moment that they say the dawn comes after the darkest part of the night, and through a very fortunate series of events, I discovered meditation. And meditation was actually my gateway into hypnosis and kind of more, you know, mystical research of like the symbolism, that your subconscious uses. But I started off with just a simple meditation practice, and it changed my life. Gave me a lot of relief from my anxiety. I felt connected with myself again. I felt embodied again. And I was obviously, fascinated with how and why that had happened. So I started, doing the research into the technical side and the mechanical side of what was happening during meditation, and discovered through studying different sources, both scientific and spiritual, that meditation has a profound effect on your subconscious mind. And yeah, that was basically the meditation was my gateway drug into and studying and trying to understand my subconscious, and then ultimately, working with other people to some extent with theirs.
Okay. What what do you think the subconscious actually is? Because I think one of the problems is obviously like in the history of psychology, you've got
Mhm,
the subconscious going all the way back to Freud at least, right?
mhm,
Um, but I think a lot of people when they hear about subconscious beliefs or subconscious patterns or whatever it is, it's
mhm.
it it strikes you as something that's hard to know about or acknowledge or even try to deal with.
Mhm.
Because it's like, well, what would it mean for a thought form to be subconscious, right? Like we have an autonomic nervous system that's obviously doing subconscious processes for our body all the time, right? Pumping your blood, your breathing, your digestion. None of that is happening consciously in the sense that you're not aware that it's happening. You're not, uh, you don't have to actively focus on making that happen, right?
Yeah.
It just happens. But I
Mhm,
think when we start getting away from the physiology and starting talking about psychological processes. For some reason, there's a disconnect there. So, can you
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about kind of your understanding of the subconscious, what it is,
Mm.
and how that interacts with our daily waking life?
Yeah. Um, the short answer is I don't know, right? And
Uh-huh.
that I don't know is I say it with confidence because I feel as though, and my own personal research has led me to believe that the subconscious, I mean, by its very name, is kind of beyond our full perception, you know?
Yeah.
And what that says to me is that it is a part of us that is expands beyond the dimensionality that we have direct access to. That's how I kind of look at it. And I hear people often use, the analogy of the iceberg and um, the conscious mind and our thoughts and, being that we can kind of interact with is the tip, but really our being extends much further beyond that. And I believe it is a lack of faculty within our human design that essentially prevents us from accessing it in such or defining it, I should say, very clearly. And I think that's pretty widely agreed upon. And that's why, for the longest time, hypnosis and other kind of practices were seen as, I mean, up until more recent years, they were almost in the same category as, witchcraft and there's honestly a lot of funny links between the two practices, but the main reason for there being so little scientific research into it is largely because it is a very hard thing to study empirically because it's a very subjective part of the mind, and that does not do well in scientific research. But that doesn't really negate the anecdotal evidence and the kind of, I guess, everyone's firsthand experience with their own belief systems and how powerful that they are.
Hmm.
We can't really measure it. We can't really examine it, with the processes that we'd like to. But there's no denying the influence that it has on our everyday lives, like you were saying, with our even just our bodily functions, That's to me where the two kind of intersect because it is the physical interacting with the non-physical, and our heart beats whether we want it to or not, and our lungs, breathe and all these things. So for me personally, my relationship with my subconscious is such that I view it as a generative force or flow of energy that um, not only influences my internal state but also my external state. Um, and what I mean by that is, I often kind of look at the analogy of like, if this is a simulation, right? And we're all wearing a VR headset, there is the capital I or the I am, which is still the user or the player, Then
Hmm.
there's the headset, which for me is like the conscious mind. And then there's the world itself, which is very real and also not real at the same time. And to me, that is the subconscious. That link to a different plane, but that we have connection to, but not full access to. Exactly.
Okay, so you know how does one go about then accessing it, right? Because I think that's the other kind of thing that's up in the air is like, okay,
Mhm.
well, if we can't fully understand what it is and we
Mhm.
can't directly interact with it, obviously there are presumably, would you say, maybe indirect means of influencing it
Mhm.
or ways in which your conscious life, your conscious actions and behaviors
Mhm.
can kind of trickle down into the root and change things on a subconscious level? How do you think about just getting access to that space in the first place?
Yeah. If you were to look at it like it's a computer, right? Now, humans are perfectly imperfect in such that if you have a computer and you download a program, it's going to be on there until it corrupts or you delete it or something, you know? Humans and I guess our organism or could be free will or there's some sort of latency there. But in any case, repetition is what has the most prominent effect on your subconscious, right? At least for adults, because as an adult, you know, with a fully formed brain, your patterns are very much, you know, they're there and they're not fixed. You can change them, but they don't like to be changed because we like repetition and we like, you know, pattern essentially. So the most surefire way to influence your subconscious is through repetition, and that could be repetitive thought patterns, repetitive actions to change a belief. It could be, you know, affirmations. And essentially, what repetition does is it creates a strong enough signal, which can then bypass the conscious mind and imprint on the subconscious mind. And what I mean by that is, so let's say we're born and you're a baby, and you know they say that for the first 4 years of your life, you're in a theta brainwave state. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, yeah.
So
You're very plastic.
exactly, yeah, yeah. Your neuroplasticity is like crazy from you know the first few years of your life, and it's because you're just landing here and you're like absorbing everything you can, and at a certain point, you know, these beliefs start to, I guess, crystallize and they can be positive, they can be negative, and pretty much everybody, it's usually a combination of both, you know? Um, and we develop and adopt these from our parents, society, just our general environment, you know? And looking outside, that's never going to be a perfect set of, you know, principles to download into any mind. Um, But in any case, as you grow, you form this kind of layer around the subconscious, right? And we call it the conscious mind. And this acts as like a filter, we'll say, because you don't want everything to be constantly penetrating your subconscious mind. Because that wouldn't be safe, you know? Everybody's got different energies, everybody's got different intentions, different um motivations, you know. So there has to be some sort of protective layer around it. Um, And it's a very, you could equate it to, you know, the masculine and feminine roles within the universe, right? So you have a woman, you have a man, and the man, you know, through some sort of intercourse, impregnates the woman who then births life to a baby, right? The same process occurs on repeat all the time with your subconscious mind, which is the feminine, right? It is receptive. It is the the darkness in which the light grows, you could say. And your conscious mind is the penetrative, you know, masculine, like even with your thoughts are like they're pointing outwards and they're looking for things and at things, you know. And your subconscious mind is the more receptive. It is the incubator of these things, right? So to create an impression on your subconscious that roots deeply enough for it to then, you know, manifest, for lack of a better word, whether that be in something external or internal, has to be a pretty strong signal, you know? And like going to the gym, the more you do repetition of an exercise, the stronger you get in it. The same thing can be said for your subconscious mind. The more you affirm or repeat something, the more likely you are for that impression to take root in your subconscious. And that's the kind of slow path to it. There are obviously lots of other ways that people engage with it that are in essence designed to be a quicker route to get to that point. And hypnosis being one of them, psychedelics being another one. People often describe having, you know, cathartic states during exercise, yoga, meditation, all these different practices where essentially what you're doing is you're letting the conscious mind and the filtering layer kind of, ease a bit, you know? When you're in hypnosis or different states of meditation, your brain is in theta, the brainwave state, which is when your subconscious is more open and receptive to receiving this, to changes, to receiving new information. Um, so that's the kind of idea. You want to bypass the conscious mind, which is there to protect, and it's doing its job when it does that. But sometimes it's also protecting you from things that you actively want to change and call in.
Right, right. So essentially what's going on is that there are phases in your life or experiences that you have that leave a strong impression on the subconscious
Hmm.
or just the way that you're living your life in a day to day. Those impressions create patterns. Those patterns become the character of your subconscious, right? And then from there, there's the ability through repetition in the conscious mind, right? Like you are what you repeat, right? Um, those can affect it, but you're saying there are also these other sort of ways to kind of open up the gating mechanism of normal consciousness into the subconscious and access it, uh, let's just say faster, right?
Hmm. Hmm. That is
So,
the general idea.
so let's talk about hypnosis.
Hmm.
What is it, and how does it manage to sort of bypass this conscious gating mechanism?
Hmm. So hypnosis, by its definition, is one person. Sorry, not even necessarily one person, but it is a person being guided either by themselves or another into an altered state of consciousness with the intention of um, facilitating change whilst there. So you can do this with yourself. You can do it with a partner. There is a lot of different methodologies and modalities around hypnosis, but in the way that people understand and think about it most frequently, it is one person guiding another through either a series of visualizations or a sensory experience that has a specific intention to it. This is what differentiates it from meditation, which also has an intention, whether it be to relax or to center yourself or be mindful. Hypnosis assumes that there is a specific reason and cause for the session or the practice, and that is the grail that you're kind of going after through moving through it. If you were to look at the brain when it's in meditation or hypnosis, it's going to look very, very similar. And the benefit, I guess you could say, of hypnosis is that if you're not an experienced meditator, we've all probably been in a spot where you try and sit down and meditate, struggle to maintain focus. Having another person there is helpful for maintaining, focus on whatever the task at hand is. Basically, it's the guidance of it is what keeps it linear and keeps your mind from wandering. Essentially.
Hmm. So what is the mechanism by which hypnosis gets you into this state faster?
Yeah, it is essentially so your subconscious, the language of your subconscious is imagery and symbolism, emotion, intuition. It's essentially the right side, of your brain, if you wanted to like categorize it that way. You've got, the analytical side, and then you've got the more intuitive side. And the mechanism for hypnosis is trying to employ as much of the intuitive part of your brain as possible, such that your consciousness, if it were on a pendulum, swings further into that kind of sector. And then what you do there is down to whatever the intention is. But you basically use imagery, you use symbolism, you try and employ emotion as much as possible. And it's a lot, it's for lack of a better word, an irrational process. Your mind wants to rationalize things and make sense of them and categorize them, but it really is. those things have their function in place after the process itself. If I'm doing a session with someone and they're being overly analytical of whatever they are experiencing, I gently guide them to, let those feelings and thoughts subside for the time being, to circle back to later when you've moved through the process to its entirety, and then analysis then becomes, useful. In the moment, it's going to basically, act as a blocker to that.
I want to back up a little bit and talk about hypnotic induction.
Mm,
Because I think when I was asking about the mechanism, I was actually trying to get there
yeah.
before we get into the deeper aspects of like what's going on during the hypnosis session.
Okay.
Induction, it, from what I understand, can be quick or it can be slow.
Hmm.
It can be slow in the sense of like it starts out as like something like a normal, like a guided meditation.
Hmm.
Or there are, of course, everyone has seen kind of the parlor tricks of very fast inductions, right? Where someone
Hmm.
can be put into a hypnotic state very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Are people making a bigger deal than is necessary around induction or the depth of induction? How do you think about that?
That's a good question. I believe that there are lots of different types of people, of course, in the world. And when you're talking about hypnosis as a practice, suggestibility and agreeability are huge factors in that, right? So there's a whole cohort of people that say, hypnosis wouldn't work on me. I'm not hypnotizable. And everybody goes in and out of that brainwave state all the time anyways. So it's not like you're not able to get there. Whether or not you allow yourself to go there is the differentiating factor. So somebody might have a very high guard up and a huge resistance to it for whatever reason, environmental or just their nature. And I would assume that for, stage hypnotists or the people that you see on the street, I would assume that those people are quite adept at identifying people that are, highly suggestible and agreeable to whatever, um, understanding they have of people's body language and how they react to certain stimuli. And they're basically zeroing in on those people who are going to have the greatest effect, who are gonna resonate with the process the most. So I'm not the person to say, you know, hypnosis is a cure all and everybody is going to resonate, super, super well with it. If you are, if you spend, more of your waking life in that emotional, creative, intuitive part of your mind, then you will more than likely resonate more with it. If you are someone who is more skeptical, more analytical, it's not to say that it can't be of help to you. It's the precursor is that there's probably some more work that needs to be done before it can be as helpful to you as it would be to someone who naturally is already used to going in and out of that kind of state. So with induction, there is you can, and I've worked with people in the past, who start off very skeptical, very like hyperlogical people, and they themselves did not think that it would work for them. But really, what it comes down to is your beliefs, and we do have a lot of say over that, but we don't have a lot of say in how they form, leading up into adulthood. So there are people that are surprised by how receptive they are to the process. And there's really a 10-15 minute exercise that people do, which basically kind of tells you how receptive you are to it. And that exercise is helpful to, hypnotists to know how, much work will be involved to help the person that they're supposed to be working with. But it essentially comes down to, you have your two hands out. You get the participant to close their eyes and you walk them through some visualizations, holding a heavy book, holding a light, helium balloon. And if somebody at the end of that is sat and their hands are like this, then they're not as suggestive. And not that they can't train themselves to be more receptive to it. Initially, you might say to them, the way that I always phrase it for people is like, if you're someone who enjoys being in your conscious mind, then that is the route that you should explore to perform whatever kind of, inner work that you're trying to do. Like talk therapy, CBT, whatever it is. That doesn't change the fact though that everybody is operating via their subconscious mind all day, every day, and using it to your advantage is something that everyone can, and in my opinion, should do.
Mhm.
If we have a belief system that is malleable, it's everybody's right and their responsibility to make sure that the belief system that they're operating with is one that is serving them. And if that takes more work for you or less work for you, it's kind of irrelevant.
What are some beliefs that people come to hypnotism for to
Mm,
deal with that they assume are subconscious beliefs?
mhm. I would say the most common case that I work with is people that they believe that they're stuck, essentially. They believe that they are dissatisfied with where they are at and they don't know how to move forward or how to pivot. Um, and that's again in itself just a belief. You have all the answers always inside you, anyways. If you are capable to tap into that internal guidance and follow it, then those phases of stagnation are become less and less frequent. But that is the primary um, case study that I would work with personally. Statistically speaking, hypnosis is most effective for people who are experiencing chronic pain, um, and honestly, less effective in people who are trying to use it to deal with, addiction. And the reason for that is if you want to quit smoking, there is still a part of you that does not want to quit smoking. And the desire to change has to be greater than the desire to stay the same. And then hypnosis acts as a really good catalyst for that. And I say hypnosis because that's what I'm experienced with, but it could be, a psychedelic experience or some other form of subconscious work. Um, Really, though, for people who are experiencing chronic pain, there is no reason in your right mind why you would want to continue that. Therefore, it is a lot easier to make a lasting change in that way because all systems are on board except for the piece that isn't. And then once you kind of get that piece on board, that it's, allegedly smooth sailing. So the efficacy rate for chronic pain is I think in the 70 to 80 percentile, whereas people who quit smoking with hypnosis, I think the efficacy rate is like closer to 40 to 45%. So it just goes to show.
What are the ways in which chronic pain is influenced by the subconscious? Because it would seem to me like, well, of course I don't want to be in pain. So why would changing my beliefs about that have an effect?
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you, honestly. Truth be told, it you know, in the same way that your subconscious is driving your heart to beat and your lungs to expand and contract, it is also influencing the signals that your brain is sending out through your nervous system. So the why is or the how even is less clear to me other than it there is some sort of, I guess, bridge occurring between the mind and the body that hypnosis and particularly chronic pain hypnosis accesses and people experience, the highest rate of relief from. And you could get woo woo with it and say, we're creating our own reality and we're creating our own suffering, and you have influence to change that as well. On a biological level, I don't know why that is the case. I can only speak to it from you know, I guess a sublogical level of, yeah, I believe that I'm in pain, so if I can change that belief, then it's going to benefit me. My grandmother, actually, who is a living, breathing example of this. She had an accident at work, and she injured her back and her spine really badly, and she had multiple surgeries on it. And the typical, doctor fashion told her she was going to be in chronic pain for the rest of her life. And she, through not hypnosis, but transcendental meditation was her practice, she was able to alleviate a significant amount of that pain to the point where she says it doesn't affect her at all anymore. And that was the
Wow.
only treatment that she really had for it. And it's always kind of anecdotal like that. It's the power of the mind and the will to heal that is innate in, like, all of us. And yeah, the belief that you can and the belief that you can't are both kind of true.
And how is that different, do you think, from the addiction? Because when you said, okay, well, the efficacy for addiction, it sounds like is still quite high, but it's
Mhm.
not nearly as effective, as reliable. Um,
Mhm.
wouldn't you just say, like, okay, well, the idea that I don't want to quit is
Mhm.
itself just a belief that I could change?
Mhm.
Why can't that just go up one more level?
It absolutely can. It absolutely can. And that's why, people want to put a lot of weight behind the medium or the modality that they use for something, as opposed to their own intention and drive behind it.
Mm,
Like, hypnosis is not magic, it can be used as a tool to achieve miraculous effect. But it in and of itself is just like a hammer. It's what you do with it, you know?
mm,
So, and I guess in my own experience of addiction and seeing people around me go through it, there's a lot. It's less so about the act of smoking. Like, if somebody comes to me and they want to quit smoking and they want to do it through hypnosis, I'm gonna do 3 sessions with them. One is gonna be to create an aversion to the cigarettes or the nicotine. One is gonna be to create an affinity for the experience of not smoking. And then the third is going to be to anchor it. And you might go on and repeat that, but really that is the kind of formula for achieving that. And that is operating on a very mechanical level, when really people, you know, resort to addictive behaviors. Like, it's not the substance itself that is the problem. The substance itself is actually a solution. So
yeah.
people might say, I want to quit smoking, but really what they want to do is, feel good enough to be healthy and not smoke, or address their own self-esteem issues that are leading to them, trying to fill some sort of hole in themselves. And I think the efficacy rate not being as high probably comes from people misidentifying the reason that, or the actual thing that they want to work on.
Okay. Is hypnosis potentially scary?
Depends who you ask, I would say. Yeah. I have definitely worked with people who were very afraid of what might come out or what they might experience, see, say. Um, and through all my different trainings, the crux and the core that we are taught is that your subconscious, first and foremost, is there to keep you alive and well. So it cannot and would not show you something or have you do something that would be in direct, you know, confliction with your own well-being. It's not gonna traumatize you. It's not gonna allow, like, if I have someone under hypnosis and I tell them to jump off a bridge, they're not gonna do it, despite what people might think. Um, it's it would go against its own, programming, which is to keep you safe, essentially. So there is a, I guess you could say, an element of uncertainty around it, which people definitely, it's the unknown. It's a new experience. It is a part of yourself that you are not super familiar with, or at least you don't think you are. So I could understand the uncertainty around the unknown. But in every experience that I have had personally through going through hypnosis or have facilitated others through, the feeling is one of complete relaxation, um, alleviation of stress, healing. I mean, the list goes on. It's an overall very enjoyable experience. Not to say that it can't be emotional, because it definitely is and has been for me and others. There is often emotional release, which can be scary for people who, but at the end of the day, the assumption is that you are ready and willing to move through that experience, and that's why you're having it.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about this notion of like duty of care.
Mm,
You know, obviously, if someone is suggestible and they're in a hypnotic state, they're very vulnerable. Now, you
mhm,
just said, okay, well, your subconscious isn't going to do something just because someone tells it to do something that's
mhm,
against them. But it seems to me that there is still this issue of wanting to make sure that if someone is putting someone into a hypnotic state as a service provider, that they
mhm,
are taking great care with the vulnerable state that individual is in. How do you think about
mm.
that?
I often view it as and it's an important part as a practitioner to be able to separate my own ego and my own self and my own desires to be, effective from the person's experience. And that's why it's so, I mean, the practice that I would follow with people is quite formulaic in that my role there is to ask questions. It is to um, move the experience along forward. But it's not really my role or my right to kind of try and imprint anything on there of my own. And nor would it be effective in doing so, like let's say I am, evil mastermind of the world and I want everybody to bow down to me. And that's essentially me trying to, impose my will on other people. But other people have a will which is also as strong. And the will to be free, I would assert, is a lot stronger than the will to control and suppress. So even if I wanted to and tried to, exert some sort of influence over someone that, in a way that they didn't want to, let's say it even works temporarily. At some point, their own, nature to be unlimited and to be free is going to outshine that, I would say.
Yes, and so perhaps there's some gray area in terms of the potential risks involved.
Yeah. And I mean, you could look at Nazi Germany, that was the whole state of people that were under some sort of mass hypnosis. And there's a lot of study done into compliance and influence,
Yeah.
and a lot of it ties into, the social proof of it. Is the person beside me? Do they say it's okay? Do they say it's okay? So really, if I were to suggest ways to combat against the kind of manipulation tactics that we see in the world, I would be suggesting people to not ignore the influences around them, but to give more attention and focus and weight and trust into their own sense of like sovereignty and their own ability to sit with something, actually weigh it up internally, understand how it feels, and then decide and, act based off of that, which is
Mhm.
easier said than done, but that's that's my secret to self liberation, I would say, is trust yourself more than anything else.
And after given session, or let's say a series of multiple sessions,
Mhm.
is there like essentially homework or aftercare or something that people need to be doing in order to reinforce the lesson?
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, it comes back to what I said at the beginning about repetition, you know? I can go to the gym once and it will be good for me, or I can go to the gym 100 times and it will be better for me. And there's really no limit to that. So hypnosis as a service is very beneficial for introducing people to that state, for guiding people through the experience such that they become familiar with it. But my role is never to be someone's therapist for life. If that's the case, then I've gone wrong somewhere, because I don't need to be there to guide you to your center or to your inner world for the rest of your days, you know? You should and you can get there yourself, and that is what's going to have the greatest impact long term, is if you are repetitively working to, sculpt your subconscious and your belief system into something that you just determine is, um, you know, serving you. In
Okay.
the same way that, you have a personal trainer and you learn how to do the exercises and you might go off on your own. Some people like the convenience and the accountability. So it's a different strokes for different folks kind of thing. But definitely after, let's say I do a package of sessions with someone, I'm recording those sessions and I am advising them to basically listen to the recording in between sessions, because that repetition is very important. And then, once the kind of block of like sessions has like expired. After that, I would still encourage them to listen, to do more kind of repetition of the same um, types of experiences. I often share like pre-recorded hypnosis scripts that are just my voice that they can listen to and create new experiences for themselves, kind of on the regular, because the questions are open ended. So if you listen to it one week, it might be different than then if you listen to it another week. And yeah, building up that relationship with your subconscious is at least in my opinion very important and very beneficial.
Okay. All right. So I want to switch gears here and talk about some, let's just say, more esoteric subjects that I know that you're a
Hmm.
specialist in.
Hmm.
So you not only have studied the you know, the subconscious mind and hypnosis, but you're
Hmm.
also familiar with some other things that are maybe a little bit more outside, even further outside of the mainstream, right?
Hmm.
Um, things like ceremonial magic, past life regressions, etc. These are
Hmm.
things that are broadly not accepted, right, as even real things, right? Let alone things with any kind of scientific or empirical validity.
Yeah.
But we're on hacking state. Our job is to find exploits. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about past life regressions, what those are, even what they mean, why they're useful, um,
Mm.
how you came to this. I've had exactly one person on before who I think spoke to something similar, and
Mm.
it was a side tangent attached to a larger conversation we were having.
Mhm.
So I'm struggling with how to open this, but I would like to get into it.
Yeah.
What are past life regressions? Do you need to believe in like reincarnation, for example, to accept that? Um, how are they useful? What do they tell people? Why even explore this area in the first place?
Yeah. Um, I'm excited to get into this, honestly, because it'll be a first for me speaking kind of publicly about it. But I want to open with, I am a very flawed human being like everyone else, and I do my best to speak authentically, and from my own experience and belief system. I do not suppose or try and impose that onto anybody else. So anything that I have said or anything that I will say take it as you see it and make your own judgments on it. But I always speak from my own belief system because I know that I'm safe in that. Not everybody has to agree with me or, um, yeah, and I'm okay with that. So with something like past life regression, you will have people that will assert that it is, you experiencing who you were in a previous life before this incarnation. And I think that there's, I think that there can be like elements of truth to that. But when you talk about the universe that we live in and potentially the multiverse that we live in, it doesn't really, doesn't really matter all that much, because like we know that time isn't linear, right? Time is radial. So all these moments are happening right now, anyways. So there's no past life or future life. It's all happening in some dimension right now. So my interpretation of past life regression is your subconscious is bringing you through a set of experiences that may or may not have happened elsewhere in the cosmos, but are pertinent to your experience right now. And that's why you see a lot of people who have the same past life experience, that they're Alexander the Great or that they're some prophet.
It's very
And
convenient that we've all been Alexander the Great, I should say from my own experience.
yeah. And I mean, it's so put it this way, right? Let's say you are stepping into a role of leadership, or that's what you want out of your life.
Mhm.
And you delve into your subconscious to find some sort of direction or meaning or guidance. And what's it going to do? It's going to pull from the collective source of someone or some experience that everyone is kind of tapped into that has an abundance of the lessons that are going to be valuable to you. And I've done a ton of past life regression sessions with other people. And a lot of them are kind of boring. Someone's, a farmer, a laborer, or something, and they go through a very regular life. And at the end of it, you kind of sum up what was the lesson here, what was the purpose, and it's no matter what the experience itself is, there's a lot of commonality in the themes that people kind of gather at the end, and it is to be present, to be appreciative of the life that you're having, to put love before everything else, and in the same way that a really good movie can bring you to tears, it doesn't devalue that because the movie's fictional. So I tell people to not focus on who they were, what they were doing, and really kind of put all the juices in the why you had that experience. The how is kind of irrelevant because you're not Alexander the Great now. You're you, whoever you are. And that's more valuable than being Alexander the Great because you can touch it. It's right here in front of you. Um, and I've done these sessions with people who don't believe in reincarnation, and more often than not, they will go to a part of their current life, an earlier part of their current life. If their belief system doesn't allow them to go beyond that, then they will, go back to childhood or something of the sort. In the same token, for people who have a really broad belief system, I've had people go to, different planets. I've had people not be in a body at all. They were in just some sort of like energetic kind of space by their own description. So it's really like your subconscious is basically painting a picture or writing a movie that you can view and extract wisdom from and apply to your life right now. Whether or not it's you on a different level, who knows? I believe that we're all doing musical chairs here with our souls and we're just hopping from body to body so that we can all have all the experiences anyways. And that's why I think many people have the experience of being Alexander the Great or Cleopatra. It's because if there is a collective, psyche, then those lives exist in there somewhere. And if it's relevant to what you're experiencing right now, then your subconscious might pull from that. Even if you've just, heard about those stories through history books or whatever, it's just trying to give you some juice that you can then apply to your own life.
When under what conditions or why do people have these experiences?
It's a good question again. Most of the people that I've worked with in this way are, again, looking for some kind of alternate perspective to what they're going through because we live our lives, literally up to our eyes in it, and it can be beneficial to look at the same set of circumstances through a different set of eyes. Um, and that would be the I would say like primary driving, you know, reason why people benefit from it is because it's still within themselves but separate from themselves, like for all intents and purposes in this experience you're in another body or you're in another life, so the emotions that you feel are very real. You can't fake that, so to come out of it and to return back to your everyday waking life, and you have gone on this journey, it is like condensing a life's worth of experience into an hour or two. And that kind of time dilation is very, powerful, I would say, to people that are trying to make move because we're all, walking along this path in life. I describe doing hypnosis or sessions like this as taking a kind of a skip or a jump, It's not going to get you to the finish line because there is no finish line, but it is going to, like I said, condense kind of a lot into a little.
So people can get here through hypnosis, they can get here through other methods as well?
So I often have heard and also experienced myself, in psychedelic journeys and experiences, um, a feeling of like moving through alternate realities or past lives, So the how that you get there is also, less important, I would say, as to what are you taking out of it.
Yeah.
Uh, and everyone's going to relate to that differently. Everyone's going to resonate with something differently. Some people will go and do ayahuasca in the jungle 10, 15 times, but you mention hypnosis to them and it's like, what are you talking about? That's crazy stuff, and vice versa. So it's really just about finding the medium that really suits you, and that you feel comfortable with to explore these inner parts of yourself if you even feel called to do so.
Do you think that there are benefits to these kinds of things, what we've been discussing, outside of people who are feeling stuck? That is, maybe someone is in a place where they're actually pretty satisfied with how their life is going at the moment.
Hmm,
Um, but there's something that they could improve or could be doing better or something new that they want to be doing. Can you use these methods to, in a more, I guess, uh, positive manner rather than just trying to get rid of negative things?
absolutely, yeah. And it's been a big part of my own personal practice and journey to maintain these exercises when I'm feeling good and not just when I'm feeling low, Um, and the difference is that when I'm feeling low, I can do a meditative, I could do a ceremonial magic session or practice, and experience some alleviation or some uplifting, from that. And if I'm in a good space and everything's going well and I do the same practice, it really just reinforces it and if anything, offsets the kind of, the cyclical nature to go back down, because every life's gonna have ups and downs, and I have been down and not been practicing, and I have been up and I have been not been practicing, and every combination, And really what it has done for me is just makes the highs feel higher and the lows feel less low, So if I'm in a good space and I'm practicing, really what is happening is I'm just in gratitude, and again, that repetition of like exercising being in gratitude brings about more gratitude, They say that gratitude is the attitude for growth. So for people who are feeling good or maybe they want to change something or maybe they already feel amazing. It's like if you already feel amazing, then this is just gonna be right in line with that same trajectory. And if you don't, it could be the catalyst to switch it.
Okay, okay. So, I mean, that's all very promising. I can tell it from my own experience, with hypnosis and with, psychedelics as well that, um, there's certainly a sense in which, depending on how much resistance you put forward, like, these subconscious patterns can be changed and they can be accessed in a much more, uh, swift way than through normal waking life. And it seems to
Mhm,
me like, yeah, you can go the normal route, the slow route of just repetition and daily practices and meditation and all of that other stuff. But these
mhm,
additional tools kind of help you s- accelerate that process and get
mhm,
maybe insight or get maybe a foothold on dealing with that issue a lot faster. And then
mhm,
they give you an opportunity to then reinforce that through your daily habits.
mhm,
That's been my experience. So, what I'm trying to say here is I think one other possible area of misconception is that these things serve as like a silver bullet. Like, oh, if I
mhm.
just take this drug or if I just do this session or whatever, then my
Mm.
problem will go away. And the fact that it didn't go away immediately after I did that tells me that it doesn't work. But
Yeah.
that's not really exactly how all of this stuff works.
No. And I mean, I would say that, the best way to get out of something is to go through it, And the shortcutting or the looking for the easy way out is distracting, and even if you did get what you think you want through that, you're robbing yourself of something that's very valuable. Like, we're not here to have a wondrous experience the whole time because that would be boring and it would defeat the purpose of coming into a world where there is duality. We are here, in my opinion, at least, to engage with this duality and to kind of ride it like a wave. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like these practices make you a better surfer. They don't take away the waves. That makes sense.
No, that's a great way of putting it. Um, why do you do this work?
I do it because it feels meaningful to me. It feels, I've always been obsessed with fantasy and magic as a kid.
Mm.
And as most people do, you go through adolescence and, your teenage years and at least in my case anyways, I felt like that kind of got stripped away. That wondrous kind of notion that there is more out there. And it wasn't until I started to engage with these practices that I felt that spark of, wow, there is something more than what is meeting the eye here. And it's funny because at the same time, if you engage with something mystical and you start to feel like you understand it, it kind of demystifies it, but it also doesn't take away the enjoyment of it. Like, I could talk about ceremonial magic and say it's a very, it's like it's a cross section between, love and math, or art and math, we'll say. So it's like formulaic, it is observable, which in theory takes away the magic itself. But the fact that we live in a reality whereby there are things that we don't understand and can endeavor to get more clarity on, and we can go out and search for that grail, and we can fight the dragon whatever way it means. That's been really helpful to me in just remystifying my own life. Treating the job that I'm doing like the training program that I'm in with the ascended master, or the the mystic on the hero's journey, or yet like some big goal as being the dragon that I'm trying to slay. It has been very beneficial to me for bringing the spark and kind of childlike ambition back into my life, which on the surface might look mundane, but if you really, search for it and try and find it, you'll find a lot of mystical surprises in there. So that's why I do it, because it's fun, because it's exciting, because it makes life feel like more of an adventure for me.
All right, that's it, folks. Aidan Beshoff, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Alex, for having me. This was a joy.
Awesome.
Appreciate it so much, brother.